So welcome everybody. I'm Tyler Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of Venture Cafe St. Louis. We're really excited today to kick off the first in a series with Arch Grants. This is going to be a series in which they invite companies from their portfolio who share the insights on how they've launched and grown, and maybe even give you some tips and tricks on how they won their Arch Grant. As a bonus today too, for those of you who are joining, if you are ready or thinking you're ready to apply for Arch Grants, we're going to share a little information at the end from the Arch Grants team. So thanks. Everybody knows the standards of the Zoom calls. Keep your mics on mute. However, at the end, we will do some Q&A, so you can feel free to either put your questions in the chat. Probably not a bad idea to do that anyway, just so you don't forget it. And then at the end, we'll do some of that with Andrew with 3D Gloop, and then also probably a little bit of Q&A with the Arch Grants team as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome the founders of 3D Gloop here at a St. Louis-based company who also are Arch Grants winners. And they're going to go over the details of how they got started, also share a little bit of how they grew so, well, at least in my opinion, grew so quickly to get to that revenue number that they're already at, and other insights too for founders that I know you guys will enjoy. So without further ado, Andrew, we're going to turn it over to you to kick things off.
Awesome, thank you. We're happy to be here. So
yeah, we got a short little PowerPoint that we'll share with you guys.
All right, where is? Alrighty, screen should be sharing. So we just wanted to go over at the beginning and start with a quick introduction of who we are. So I'm Andrew Martinussen, co-founder of 3D Gloop.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm also Andrew, but I'm Andrew Mayhall.
So we wanted to start this off by saying that it's going to be a little informal. We haven't rehearsed this a bunch to be a presentation, but intended it more to be kind of a conversation. Things are challenging virtual with COVID versus being able to have the interaction in person. So if we seem a little bit clunky, bear with us, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of go over our backgrounds, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done one other venture before starting 3D Gloop. I've gone through the more traditional route, raising around $2 million in private equity. I've built out some really cool intellectual property, gone down new product, and really into that business development. So, that's kind of my background. Andrew, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'm a multi-disciplinary engineer also, and I worked for a startup company, not this one, Straight Thing, after I finished college, and I've had like a larger variety of hobbies in my life than we'd have time to talk about so far, but some of those things have added skills that have made a big impact on us running 3D Gloop and getting to where we are today. The next thing I wanted to talk about is just a quick overview about what 3D Gloop is. So we manufacture coatings and adhesives, mainly adhesives for the 3D printing consumer market. We have a multi-use, easy-to-use product. We launched Gloop back in 2018. It started as a personal project that we then turned into a product after realizing the market need. To date, we've grown from just an idea to having 11 resellers globally, and we've shipped well over 10,000 products since our launch in 2018.
Yeah, so, Andrew was talking a little bit about, our product, what it does is, primarily adhesives. I can kind of take a little bit of a dive into how we got started and some of the reasons why we chose to grow in the way that we've grown. So to bootstrap versus a traditional investment, we at 3D Gloop deliberately chose to bootstrap our company from the beginning. It's important to know that there's no right answer to funding your idea or your company. Bootstrapping is one great way, and raising traditional money is another great way. They both have their benefits and their drawbacks. It's incredibly rewarding regardless of which way you go on building out your company. raising capital through traditional investments typically means that you're going to have to answer to someone else, or you're bringing on new individuals or stakeholders during the decision-making process. This can be incredibly beneficial for when you're developing new or advanced technologies. You're able to bring on partners that have done this before. Whereas bootstrapping, you're on your own. You don't really answer to anyone except yourself. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of kind of beating your head against the wall, figuring out what you don't know, and kind of where to go from there. Where we kind of made this decision was just primarily on the experience before, my personal experience. Unfortunately, it wasn't the greatest. In my past venture, went and raised around $2 million of private equity. Each round, it was, awesome and rewarding to be able to say, yes, look, we just closed this round. But with each new round, it just opened up another opportunity to fail at a larger level. At some point, we had a really diverse board of directors, and, really to help guide the company and go in many different directions, unfortunately, which led to changes in management, changes in leadership styles, and unfortunately, it was kind of our undoing. So with that experience, it just made sense for us when we're going to build 3D Gloop that maybe we wanted to start as something small and grow it ourselves to a point where it was running and sustainable. And so that's where bootstrapping was just kind of right for us. So, the key words there being independence, is the big one for bootstrapping, but also the need for a challenge. With bootstrapping, you're not handed money and saying, hey, here, let's go and execute this plan. You have to figure out how to generate that money and how to get that resource in, and then manage that really tightly, because, every little dollar counts. So it's an incredible challenge, but I think it also leads into kind of that personal growth and helping to build discipline. So, Andrew, if you wanted to add anything.
The only real addition I wanted to make is to temper everything that we say and given this presentation that, neither Andrew nor I have a big classical education in how to run a business, how to bootstrap, how to raise money, or any of that. So we're not experts or subject matter experts in our opinion on anything here, but what we can do is share the story about how we took our idea and turned it into where it is today, the decisions we've made, the ones that we think have been good, and the things that we think we did wrong and where we learned from that.
Yeah.
And that's the big takeaway from this slide deck that we're going to go through. So this slide, pretty simple. I was going to talk about the beginning of the company. So the evolution from an idea to a product, and what really happened, and what's 3D Gloop's true story versus what you might read some places or hear talked about. It's kind of funny. So back in early of 2018, around February, I had a personal need for something to solve problems. I had a dog who ended up getting bone cancer, and I wanted to make an ergonomic wheelchair that fit her, because all the ones that were out there for dogs, I really just didn't like how they looked and how they fit, and none of them seemed to work. So I'd been interested in 3D printing, and I'd wanted a 3D printer since actually back in 2012, when Andrew Mayhall actually purchased his first consumer 3D printer and had gotten me excited about the idea, but I never could justify spending that kind of money personally to buy something when I didn't have, anything other than knickknacks I could make. But this presented me with a need, so I ended up buying a 3D printer, and I drew up in CAD and I designed a wheelchair for the dog, and I ran into two major problems. One was bed adhesion, where my prints, as they would go down on this build platform, wouldn't stick. And so throughout the printing process, they would start to curl up and warp, and the prints would fail. And the second critical thing that I ran into is, the dog was small, but I couldn't do a wheelchair on a build plate. 3D printers are pretty small. So I had to make a multi-piece print, and I had to design it with different geometry to interlock it together, and nothing I did glued it together well. I tried super glues, I tried epoxies, and I ended up complaining about it to Andrew, and he ended up coming up with what would be the first formula of what 3D Gloop is today, just in the basement for me to use to kind of tackle some of my problems. And it worked. It worked really well. It was a couple weeks later, maybe a week later, we were actually on the phone one night, and Andrew said to me, he's like, hey, this stuff is really cool. Like, to the point that maybe this could help a lot of other makers running into the exact same problems we are. And we, what do you think? Do you think we can make a business out of this? We talked about it. We got excited about it. And you said, you know what? we're going to do it. At this point, neither Andrew nor I were gainfully employed. I had left the startup I was with before and didn't have a day job. So we threw everything we had into this. And we started building the company. We created a website. We built a Kickstarter, which is how we launched. And we did everything from the ground up ourselves, doing 100% of the legwork, just because we didn't have the capital to go out and spend money on doing things, the typical ways.
Yeah, and throughout this process, we kept tweaking the formulas. We kept, trying to get what we call that minimum viable product, right? That keyword that's known kind of in the startup ecosystem is what could you go to market with? I remember that conversation with Andrew very vividly, even though it's been almost 3 years ago. I made that first formula for him, and he's like, "Hey, this stuff works. It works really well." And I was like, oh, "Okay, cool. Glad we solved that problem," and moved on to the next one. When he got into the 3D printing, it kind of re-inspired and ignited that fire in me to get back into the making and that hobbyist community, if you will, and really start playing around with 3D printers again. And that's where I kind of noticed, I was like, hey, yeah, no, I'm seeing these same problems that he was. I didn't realize how big of an issue it was with the newer, more modern materials. And that was that aha moment that provided the spark and saying, okay, well, let's tweak this and let's see if I can, make it a little easier to apply, or make it last a little bit longer, or provide a little bit better bond strength. And, it was just us going through this process when we realized, like, wait a second, we're actually doing everything that a startup probably would do when it comes to taking a product from concept to reality. And we had that aha moment. It was like, okay, yeah, let's turn this thing into a business and let's see where we can go. One of the things that we did wrong was that we kind of developed everything internally. When you're building a startup and you're hoping to sell a product, you better go and reach out to customers that you think that the product's applicable to. We saw these needs, and you can search online and see that, oh yeah, a lot of people have these needs, but we just kind of like assumed, like, oh yeah, everyone's going to have this need and we're going to build this product and it's going to solve everything and it's going to be successful. We got lucky,
And Andrew's touching on what I wanted to have as a critical takeaway from this slide. It's not really in our startup story that you hear there, but something we did do when we created this Kickstarter is we took my personal need a little bit too far, and we were short-sighted on not knowing what the market needed. The quick story is we developed one product and we developed another for another type of plastic that we thought was really commonly used because we wanted to use it and we liked it. And we designed our product for ABS plastic, and we designed our main focus as a bed adhesive, that first problem I had. And we thought this is going to be the thing that sells this product. Our original claim to fame for our company was you can print ABS on a room temperature build platform. Little did we know until now that ABS makes up by leagues the smallest percentage of our sales, and its least use case is a bed adhesive. So that's where we got lucky. But what we should have done and what we've done since then is really been engaged with interviewing the customers and the potential customers in the market to truly understand what their need is versus what we think their need is.
So yeah, that kind of takes us into the original Kickstarter and how we launched. A lot of people, when they hear a Kickstarter launch, immediately think of, oh, hey, yeah, these companies were super successful. They had a $10,000 goal or a $50,000 goal, and they blew it away by millions of dollars. At least that's what you see nowadays on most Kickstarters. We actually didn't go down that route. We use Kickstarter as a mechanism to launch the company, but mainly to see if this was, going to take off at all, just see if people had interest in it. We had a small goal of around $5,000. But more importantly, when we were going through a Kickstarter, what we learned is that most companies that go to a Kickstarter, they don't plan their Kickstarter. They'll do marketing, they'll do all of the creative types, and they'll just push it out with some random number that they choose. Maybe there's some math behind it. Most of the time, it's just whatever. And they'll, basically hit marketing after marketing after marketing and spend a lot of money launching their product. we took it a different approach. We planned Gloop for sustainability from day one, where we broke down all of our costs associated with making the product. We broke down all of the costs associated with actually turning this thing into a business. And, you know, we spent a lot of time. I don't want to say that we figured everything out day one, because we didn't, but what we did do was just have a really solid understanding of what we would need to hit in order to actually turn this into something that we could sell and make a little bit of money on. And so planning was really critical. And another thing is, you know, when we started, we were quite literally, you know, for lack of a better word, flat broke. You know, Andrew was, you know, out of a job. He was looking for, you know, engineering work. I was just kind of on spin down mode from my previous startup, you know, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. But, you know, we're both kind of, you know, living out of what we had saved up, and we didn't have a whole lot of money to throw into things. So we just wanted to make for sure that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it right, and we weren't going to spend a whole lot of money. So we decided that Kickstarter just kind of made sense to see where things would take off. So we planned it, we built it out, and we launched the Kickstarter on June 1st back in 2018. It took off a little bit. It was surprising to see, like, oh, hey, yeah, people started, you know, supporting it, and we had no idea where they were coming from. But what we did see is a lot of people saying, hey, your product, it can't work. It can't do what it claimed to do. And, you know, it was a little disheartening and discouraging, but we kept pushing through. What we did in the beginning of the Kickstarter phase before we launched is we reached out to a few YouTube influencers, content creators. We said, hey, would you be interested in trying out this product? Just by chance, one of them picked it up and said, yeah, this is cool. They're like, I want to do a video on it. And he did a video, and it was amazing because it pushed our Kickstarter from like a few $100s to a few $1,000s. And it was like, okay, yeah, hey, people, you know, see a use in this. What we realized quickly was that wasn't going to be enough. It was nowhere near enough. And so we actually started like looking around.
You mind if I butt in?
Go ahead.
Before the part. So the YouTuber part is actually, I think, a critical element to some advice we could have or talk about what we did wrong and right. A lot of people called our product snake oil because nothing existed that did what it did. And we were nobody. We had no reputation in the industry. We had no reputation as businessmen, and nobody had used our product. So understandably, no one had faith in the product. We ended up trying to reach out to these influencers prior to the Kickstarter, which we did, the launch, and we didn't get anybody to reply to us originally. And what we ended up doing was taking a risk and seeming unprofessional in some regard. And we sent an email with the subject line, the best damn glue, period. And that's actually what got this individual, Make Anything, who made this first video about our product, to engage with us. And that was one of the key things that actually helped us fund this Kickstarter and start the company.
Yeah. So, when we realized that these videos weren't really going to help fund the Kickstarter, we started searching around, like, how do normal Kickstarters, you know, fund? And that's where we learned kind of those secrets to Kickstarters that I kind of shared before. Most of the time, they don't know what they're doing, and they just, you know, spend a lot of money into marketing and kind of spamming those creatives and, you know, getting it in front of the right people. And we decided, it's like, well, wait a second. If it's all about getting in the right people, we need to find somewhere where we can go to get it in front of the right people. And it just, by happenstance, there was a new trade show that was starting. It was called the East Coast RepRap Festival back in 2018. And it was going, I think it was June 23rd through the 29th, or I'm sorry, 24th. And, you know, it was a few days away. And I emailed Andrew, said, hey, we got to go to this. This is a convention about 3D printing. It's just showing off 3D prints. You know, it's new, it's small, but if we want to give this thing a shot, I think we need to go here and just show people what we're doing. And so we figured out how to make this all work in a matter of just a couple of days. Thursday night, we left at like 11 p.m. and we drove all the way through the night, 900 miles to Maryland. And again, remind you, we don't have a whole lot of money to throw this way. So we're scrounging around trying to figure out how to be resourceful here. We make it there and we set up, and on Friday night, after driving 900 miles through the night, to get everything ready to go. And it was a little odd because when we were setting up, everyone was like looking at us like what we're doing, like what's going on, because we had some banners up, and no one was really coming up and talking to us, but a lot of other people were going around talking to the other people at the booths, and we're like, oh man, I don't know how this is gonna work. So later that night, we go on to finish building our displays, because again, we're scrambling to try and do this. Fast forward to that Saturday, we start showing and talking to these potential customers, and that's where we realized, like, wait a second, yeah, no, we do have something here. The reception was great, and we saw a massive spike in our Kickstarter, kind of funding goal. And it just so happened that on the 23rd was actually Andrew's birthday too. And so later on that night, we actually went to fund, our Kickstarter hit its funding goal. And it was just incredibly like rewarding, and like, okay, yeah, it's all about getting in front of the right people, but more importantly, talking to the customers, because once we had that chance to talk to them and show them what we're doing and explain it, they were like, wait a second, this is that aha moment, and they latched on. And so, from there, it was just, just really about building out and trying to grow and move forward. Did you want to add something?
The only other key thing is that something we pride ourselves in is when we planned this Kickstarter and when we funded, we also delivered our product on time. And I think that was something that's helped build our business, because at the beginning, we were able to lean on that and show that, hey, we're not just Nimrods playing around. We're planning what we're doing, we're being methodical, and we can deliver on what we promise. I'm just handing you this because it looks like our slides got cut off here.
Oh, yeah.
For the lessons learned.
Yeah. So the big lesson learned here is really you're going to want to drum up hype, especially when, you're startup of those early adopters. Communicate with customers. I mean, just being that, that having that interaction and making for sure that, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And then, the importance of being kind of humble and understanding that you're going to have to pivot is another big one, because you're not going to get it right at the first try. So,
and that's something that applies not just to the start of your company, but especially if you're going to bootstrap something small, and even major companies, you'll see one of the biggest reasons some big companies fail is they fail to modernize, or they fail to pivot and evolve with the marketplace. Just because what you're doing right now seems like it's working, or maybe it is working great, doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. And being open to know that you don't have the best thing that's out there, but you can make it better, or you can better serve the market, is a critical thing to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I can take this one too. Yeah. So moving on, that Kickstarter snapshot to really gaining traction was when we realized where 3D Gloop was going, when we gained our first reseller. This was kind of a pivotal moment in our history, and what kind of led us to where we are today. It just so happened that after our Kickstarter, again, that whole key takeaway point of learning to communicate with the customers and, kind of drumming up hype with those early adopters led to the right person getting our product just by happenstance again, and trying it out and deciding to do a video on it.
I would disagree that by happenstance.
Okay.
So it was another content creator who received our product, but we had been making a lot of effort to build a relationship with this individual and get them to try it. And at first we were failing. And we ended up contacting other people that we had already worked with that had tried it in that bubble to help influence them to give us a shot. So it was somewhat luck that they finally caved and tried it, but we also did put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't want to undersell that.
Yeah, sure. And so when he picked it up and did a review on it, it sort of kind of provided legitimacy to the brand and to what we were doing. So much so that the largest reseller of 3D printed goods in the United States just reached out to us, said, hey, we saw the video. It seems really cool. Would you be willing to send us some samples and try it out? And, we were, blown away. We had no idea that this little thing that we were working on was going to attract something so big. But one thing that we did do was from day one, we planned to have pricing designed for resellers that, so that there was margin in there for them to make money. And so it all comes back to when we put in that original effort to plan, it was now starting to kind of pay off. And so when we sent out these products, we worked with them, trying to help them figure out, okay, what sort of a good price to sell this at, what sort of margins they need. So one of the big kind of takeaways here is you're going to have to treat your first one kind of like a sweetheart. Figure out how to work together, because one thing we need to remember here as a business is that all other businesses are in to make money, and it's it makes more sense to be easy to work with and easier to get a deal done than to say, oh yeah, no, these are our hard limits, we can't make this work, we can't do this. So that's what we did, was we really put a lot of time and effort in focusing on how to help this reseller better sell our products, and that little bit of work took us the extra mile and said, okay, yeah, let's form a partnership here. And once that happened, that further provided legitimacy to the brand and what we were doing, and it kind of established us. And once news broke that, hey, we were being picked up by the largest reseller of 3D printing goods in the United States, next reseller followed on, and then shortly thereafter we gained another reseller outside of the United States saying, hey, we want in on this, this is awesome, this is cool. So yeah, I mean, it all comes back down to the planning, and then just being open to working and figuring out how to make deals. So I mean, do you have anything to add there?
Kind of that. I can take the key takeaways.
Sure.
If you want. This ties back in. You'll see some repetition on these slides, and that's on purpose, was the importance of drumming up hype with early adopters. Again, when you're nobody and you don't have a name, the position we're in today is much different than it was 2 years ago, where we have a product and we have a group of people who are like a cult following almost behind the use of the product. And we also have online proof from trusted sources that we have a good product. Those early adopters are what's going to make or break your company if you're going to have a consumer's goods or service startup, especially if you're bootstrapping. It's really important to understand your resources. So knowing at the beginning, most startups, especially bootstrapped ones, you're going to have a lot more time than money. So spending your time on doing the right things versus spending your dollars in different areas, you have to balance that right, that you're not going to run yourself broke. Something we also did that has, I think, played a role in our success is adopting a brand personality early on. When we built our website and our Kickstarter, we developed a quirky science, sci-fi, fun-loving brand. A, it's part of our personalities. We're both kind of nerdy guys. But B, it's also really kind of something that runs home with the target demographic for who is actually going to be these 3D printers. What does your typical 3D printer look like? And that does make a big difference, because we get a lot of feedback for people reaching out independently, telling how much they love the brand and the language and how we have everything spelled out. So I'm going to take over this one. This is our snapshot for it. It's 1 year in. So we're at the end of June, July 2019, and we $100,000 in revenue. The question would be, how do we get here, or how did we get here? And it's everything we just talked about previously, plus a couple other things we wanted to touch on. One of those is a concept called don't spend first dollar. You can see a lot of companies fail in doing this, where when they start to see what could be considered success, they'll take that money and you'll buy something for personal use, or the time versus money balance. You only have so many hours in the day, and you decide, oh, I'm going to buy this thing that I don't really need yet because it helps without the need for it, and then that dollar's gone. But if you take that first dollar and you reinvest it into yourself and into your company, it's going to turn into a second dollar and a third dollar. And if you keep doing that down the road, that's how you can build something, especially bootstrap. You have to keep reinvesting in yourself. You also need to plan for success from day one. Andrew and I really didn't think this was going to take off. How could we figure it? We did our best. We saw the need. We had a cool product, but we've never done something like this. But what we did do is say, if this works, what are the building blocks? What's the foundation we need to build to make sure this is going to be okay? Some of that is going to be understanding what type of entity you need to be. We are an S Corp, a C Corp. I'm reading this like we're a C Corp, not an S Corp, but you have to be an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC. What fits your needs? How is it going to work with your taxes? What's your liability going to be? What business actually fits what you're trying to market as a service or a consumer good? And then a question is, how do we do it with full-time founders, and this, we haven't really talked about this much or before today, is that we didn't. So Andrew is full-time and has been full-time since day one. But actually, right after we funded the Kickstarter, I took a full-time job somewhere else, and I've had that full-time job since then. There's been a lot of pros and a lot of cons to that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But the main reason we did that is that if I wanted to today come on, the cost to the business would be so great that I think it would stifle our growth. And it's something we've talked about before, where growth is so important that we're reinvesting those dollars back into the company rather than funneling them to me to pay my bills. That comes with sacrifice and some other things, but that's not the main intention of this slide. So for the remainder of the snapshots, just kind of dealing with our time here, I'm going to quickly go through, and Andrew probably is to our 5th, 6th, and 7th snapshot.
Sure.
So we can get to some other more important talking points, because really up to year one and that 100,000 is what a lot of what built us to where we are. So MRF 2019 is called Midwest RepRap Festival. It's the largest consumer trade show for 3D printing in the US every year. The things that we did that we think we did well was maintaining and building a professional front. So we invested in what we could afford to have like a nice big photo op banner, and we redid our display table and our props, and we went in and we wanted to look like we're a real business and we know what we're doing. So you can have faith that if you're going to spend your money, you're going to get a high quality product consistently. We made efforts to become ingrained in the maker community. We continually do that because that's our market. At the end goal, we want, our name Gloop to become synonymous with sticky, and we want everybody who prints to know that if they need a glue, our product is the one to use. And the way to do that is community engagement and having good customer service.
Yeah.
We also in MRF attempted to launch a new product via Kickstarter. At the end, it was a failure. We had a really lofty goal. It was a really big undertaking to break into a new market, and something we still want to do that's on down the road. Unfortunately, we didn't raise our funding goal, but it's still really important that we did this because we learned to win, but we also did it because we're still focusing on growth. Stagnation, we think, is one of the primary failure modes that can kill a startup, particularly a bootstrap startup. EARF 2019 was a really big deal for us personally because we returned a year later to the event that was really the catalyst that started our company, but we were able to return as a sponsor. We unveiled our new product, PET Gloop. In the bottom corner, you can see a chair. We used that prop as a vehicle to attract attention online and in person. Is this puzzle chair glued together, printed out of a plastic that there's no glue, period, in the market that had worked for before. The repeated lesson from above is on growth and the lack of stagnation. It's critical to a bootstrap startup. Something kind of that we feel, whether we're right or wrong, is that if you aren't growing, you're failing at these early stages in such a small company where you're needing to continue to build. If you end up plateauing, you're going to end up going down, or you're not going to continue to grow with the market. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tying back into what Andrew had, you talked about in one of the previous slides, is the concept of don't spend your first dollar. That is such an important aspect to how we grew 3D Gloop into what it is today. And I'm not trying to say like, hey, we're super successful here either, because we're still in our infancy. But what we did was we took this principle of saying, okay, what could we do that we could be resourceful on and reduce our costs so that we can reinvest and kind of continue building out what we have currently and growing it into what it is. And really maintaining focus on, okay, we're here right now. We need to be here in, a month or two in order to, keep alive. And so that's where we put a lot of resources, being time, into figuring out all of the workings of 3D Gloop, talking about what it cost for us to make it, how we go through all of these processes, and then what the customer sees in the end, and how they're getting the product, how we're getting it out, and how we're marketing, and basically everything from a system level. And so what we found was was that in multiple times throughout our history up to this point, we had hit kind of a stagnation level where we weren't growing fast enough to support the continued operations of the company. And realizing this and understanding this, it kind of made something click in our heads and saying, wait a second. If we aren't focused on our own growth, we are unfortunately going to fail. And the reason why is because we might be surviving from month to month to month, kind of like living paycheck to paycheck. But when it comes to actually developing a new product or continuing to get market penetration or having money so that you can put into marketing or working with a content creator, it's just not there. So again, if you stagnate, you die. Fortunately, you might not be dead right now, but at some point it's going to happen. So yeah, I mean, it just comes back to if you're not growing, you're failing, unfortunately.
The last snapshot we're going to touch on, and I as quick as it's just the whole year of 2020. We maintained steady growth we had made more direct sales. We increased the amount of sales we did. We gained additional resellers, and we started new partnerships with other major industry players. Our personal opinion is we didn't grow enough, and we're wanting to continue growing. But what we did do is identify the key pain points in our company. We really started to take the steps to run our company as a business rather than a fast and loose startup. And sometimes that's hard. There's going to be a point in a bootstrapped or a regular company you start with investment that you have to do that. And in a bootstrap scenario, that can be really hard because running things the right way takes a lot of time and a lot of money sometimes, but taking it back is critical if you want to play this in the long run. And obviously, the biggest thing that happened to us in 2020 is we received an Arch grant, which is just a game changer at our current size. We are unfunded through anything other than our own revenue. And so the opportunities of just not just the revenue that came in, but the community that we've gotten to be involved with that we're getting to tap into.
Absolutely.
And these business professionals that can help us with some of our shortcomings, which I'll talk about in a second, has been an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. So do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start off. We did want to touch on failure modes because we said that we would at the beginning. And I think one of the biggest ones you're going to run into, particularly with a bootstrap startup, is time. There's never enough hours in a day. And really what it's like running a bootstrap startup is you're going to look around you and there's just fires everywhere. There's things that need to be fixed, that are breaking, that aren't working, that are subpar everywhere. But what you have to do, unfortunately, is focus on these closest fires or the closest crocodile to the boat. And you have to take care of these major problems. You'll end up fighting pop-up work and something you didn't expect that comes up, but you're always going to do that. What you do need to do, though, is keep growing and know that some areas are just going to have to languish, and you have to be able to prioritize for your company what's best. A key example for us is if you looked at our website today, it is something that is a major focus now for us to change, is that on our product pages, most of our website is what was done prior to our Kickstarter. So we've got pictures that were taken of the earliest version of our product with our old labeling in my garage.
Yeah.
Rather than having a nice photo of our current label. And that's something that needs to change. We 100% feel that way. It's just finding the time and prioritizing to get to that versus what else we're working on. Another key failure mode is that your team is not going to be an expert in many areas. Andrew and I are not web developers. We are not marketers. And those have been some of our biggest shortcomings. And it's critical that no matter how many people you bring in your team, unless you're going to be raising a lot of capital, you're going to have a lot of shortcomings, and you need to be humble and you need to be aware that some stuff is going to just not do well. If you're doing it yourself, it's not going to be what you want day one, but you can work towards that. And hopefully you can get to the point where you can hire some of that work out and you can bring other staff on board.
Yeah. And then, another aspect is not understanding, what the market needs. When we launched 3D Gloop, we launched it as a bed adhesive primarily. You can go back to our original Kickstarter. It's all still up there. You can see kind of how we've started to transition some of our messaging, but we didn't understand, unfortunately, what the market needed. We got lucky enough where we were close enough where, we were able to catch up, but again, where it comes back to is there are a lot of different areas in 3D printing for us specifically that we just didn't comprehend or didn't understand, or we didn't have that patient with the customer of how they actually use our product or how they would potentially use our product. And So thankfully we were nimble enough and we were understanding enough where we can make some changes. So not understanding that true market need is a massive failure point. Touching back on the thing that I mentioned previously was growth or lack thereof. Again, if you're not growing, unfortunately, you're probably failing. It's hard to take that mindset. But again, if you are stagnant, if things are just getting by, living paycheck to paycheck, as a business, you're not going to succeed because you're just not going to have the resources to be able to put into those important areas. And then I mean, if you want to, yeah.
So, and to take the last one, we put here, and I can't really stress this enough, that maintaining relationships with your business partner or partners is critical. When you look out there, actually one of the main reasons small and large companies fail is a lack of conflict resolution, or you end up getting hurt feelings with who you're working with. Whenever you have a business partner like Andrew and I, the amount of hours a day we spend together and talking, even though I work full time, is more than you could imagine.
Yes.
And infighting is going to happen because really, especially in a bootstrap startup, you have, in our case, two people incredibly passionate about what we're doing. We both care about the market, our product, what we're doing. We're going to have different ideas. And when you've got two people very passionate about the same idea but want to go two different ways, you have to have developed communication skills, and you need to have good conflict resolution skills. Separating personal from business is critical, and understanding that you're going to have a disagreement, but at the end of the day, you know that who you're working with also wants the best thing for your company is paramount.
Yeah, and I mean, to add to that, there's a great book out there. It's called Good to Great. If you haven't read it, you should. But what Andrew and I realized was we had several times where we were working towards a goal, and we didn't know the right decision to make. And we had heated debates. I'm not talking like, yelling and screaming matches. I'm talking heated debates on what we thought was the right direction. And we had disagreements. But what we came to realize over time is that these disagreements were pivotal in our ability to figure out what would be the best solution for the problem at hand. We were able to work out these disagreements and say, wait a second, no, that makes sense, whatever the problem might be. Decision we came to, stuck with it. Even if the other person didn't like it, we just stuck with it. And we knew, like, hey, this is the solution to the problem. I might have a difference of opinion, but that's okay. The success of the company is paramount to my feeling or whatever else, my emotional, not my emotional state at this moment. So, tying back to that book, Good to Great, that's actually one of the really interesting aspects to, building good leaders. And by far, Andrew and I are not great leaders yet, but I think we have a really cool foundation that we're building, and really trying to figure out what should we do and how we move things forward, and just in terms of the company in general.
Hey guys, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of time for some quick Q&A. I also know that Arch Grant's team was going to try and chip in to give some of those who are looking to be an Arch Grant in the future to get some insight there. So
great.
I know. So yeah, you guys ready to answer maybe a few questions here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let's do this.
I'll leave this up for reading.
Yeah, here, I'll go ahead and read them off because we got a handful of them in there, and that just might make it a little easier. Contact info was from Carl. Carl will, I think we can put the link in the chat here. If there's anything else that you guys are willing to put in there, or email or link would be great if you guys want to throw that in the chat. Thanks, Carl. Douglas asked if it's a reseller. Is a reseller or distributor or something else? I guess he's asking about your company, but I think you guys have pretty much answered that.
Could you repeat that for me?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Hopefully there's no lag here. Do you use a local designer and manufacturer for packaging?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. We don't. We do everything ourselves, or we did everything ourselves. That's actually changing now. But that is one of the key aspects of being resourceful, figuring out, hey, for us, we determined early on that we could go out, we can have someone do packaging for us, or we can have someone make our labels for us. It wasn't cost effective. And so what we decided to do and this ties back into that don't spend your first dollar, is the money that was coming in for our sales allowed us to buy, it sounds silly, but a Cricut, a little hobbyist machine that would cut vinyl stickers. And that's for the longest time, in the first 3 or 4 months, how we actually created our labels, and we made them. And that allowed us to do it at such a cost that we could save up money and reinvest that back into eventually getting labels and packaging professionally done.
Got it. All right. We got a product question here too. Does Gloop work as a base to solve adhering labels problems on 3D printed materials?
Does Gloop work
Let's read that question.
as a base to solve
Adhering label. Yeah.
Labels problem. I don't understand the adhering labels part of the question.
All right. Well, ASDS, if you can elaborate in the chat, that'd be great. I'm going to continue to move through.
Yeah, if
here.
I think I understand it, as a quick answer is going to be that the currently the adhesives we offer are designed for plastic, not plastic to other materials. We are working on more general adhesives, but currently it's just about plastic interfaces.
So Carl is asking if, Carl, your question here is 3D Gloop the factory or is it the supplier?
So we do all of.
No. What I was saying that Doug was asked what about that. I'm saying 3D Gloop is the reseller is the distributor, and the supplier factory is 3D Gloop.
Correct. We also do sell product from our location.
Well, yeah, but and so you in your pitch deck, your slides talk about B2B or B2C or B2B to B2C or whatever, consumer, as you talk and everything. What's your guys' sales right now?
So in 2020 we broke $130,000 in revenue.
Okay.
So yeah, we're growing. We're not growing as fast as we'd like, but for 2020 being what it was, where we weren't able to go to the big shows and trade shows and events, we're really happy.
Yeah, because those trade shows were actually a healthy percentage of our revenue. So that was probably more like I think online sales was like a 30 plus. Don't quote me on this.
Yeah.
Back in the napkin, in between 30 and 40% growth of online and direct sales compared to the previous year.
Yeah.
Right.
So hopefully we can continue to build that and go even further this year.
Yeah. A development in your industry.
This is Doug.
Hey guys, we got some competing questions here, but also I know
I just was trying to clarify my question.
Yeah, we'll let Doug jump in, and then we'll probably turn it over to Julia and her team. So go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, well, the question I was asking on reseller is, are they like an agent? So you only get paid when they find someone to ship it to, or do they buy the inventory from you? Are they your customer?
They're our customers. So we have a customer relationship with them. We have like sales tiers. So the more they buy, the better rates they get. But when we sell the product, they own it. So we're still, once that sale is done and they have it, it's finalized, and they come back to us when they need more. It's not like a consignment thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the promotion business of logo pens or logo shirts. The distributor buys the product, and then they pay the bill to the factory or supplier, and then the distributor gets the money from the person buying it. So that's and collects the sales tax. That's the other issue. Is that in your case, you're pretty much wholesale unless you're selling directly to the customer. You got to collect sales tax in the state of Missouri.
Yeah. All right. Well, next week and then also next month we'll have another Arch Grants talk with some other their portfolio companies. So make sure to RSVP, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks.